Good evening. This is Helen Picard, Chair of the North Andover School Committee. It is 7:02 on 5/6/2021, and I call the open meeting of the North Andover School Committee back to order. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So I'm going to start with our read of the governor's order, March 12th, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, and the governor's March 15th order, imposing a strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the North Andover School Committee may be conducted via remote participation by some or all committee members and staff. Specific information about the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to hear the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast 99 or Verizon 28, or online at North Andover CAM. No in-person attendance of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so despite best efforts, we will post on the school department website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible. Please silence your devices. This meeting is being recorded. So we're going to introduce the folks in the room, and then we'll introduce the folks online. And I will start with school committee members. And I can't see the room right now, but I remember who you are. Mm-hmm. So Ms. Lynch?
Yes.
Ms. Mabley?
Here.
Ms. Pietrowski?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
And Dr. Gilligan, can you introduce your folks?
Sure. Assistant Superintendent Mealy. Here. Assistant Superintendent Marks.
Here.
Executive Director of Special Education, Marcy Bacuzzi.
Here.
Social Emotional Learning Director, Nikki Murphy.
Here.
Okay. Town Council, Suzanne Egan. I think she will be back. And student reps, do we have Eamon?
Here.
Mika?
Here.
Ethan?
Here.
And Lindsay?
Here.
All right, great.
Wonderful. So is there anybody that was not called? And is there anybody who's supposed to be here who's not in the room? We're waiting for Attorney Egan, but we can proceed without her for the time being and make a note when she joins us. So our first order of business is public comment. We have none tonight. And so we move on to our consent agenda, which is approval of minutes from, oops, sorry, I don't have the date in front of me. Approval of minutes as printed in the
April
packet.
15th. So I'll make a motion to approve the April 15th, 2021 minutes as presented.
Second.
Yep.
And did I hear a second from Mr. McDevitt?
From Holly.
From Holly Lynch, sorry about that. Any discussion, corrections, edits? Hearing none, roll call vote, starting with Ms. Lynch.
Yes.
Ms. Pietrowski?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
And Ms. Mabley?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So those minutes are approved from April 15th as printed in the packet. And we have our student report, and we are turning to our 4 student team.
Thank you, Mrs. Picard. As some of you know, AP students are currently in the middle of taking AP exams. Those started this Monday and will end May 17th. I took one today, and I'm pretty exhausted.
Student Council just finished up Dude Be Nice Week, where they started with a school-wide raffle with colors of the school to get some prep into our step, Compliment Day to encourage everyone to be nice to each other, and then Self-Appreciation Day and Connections Day, where you could write little things that you liked about yourself and match with your friends, as well as we finished up with Gratitude Day, which we were giving back to our NAS community, and Mika will get more into that.
Yeah, so every year for Dude Be Nice Week, the student council selects a group of staff members that are not as appreciated as we wish they were. This year we decided on the lunch staff, who always work so hard for us, but especially this year have taken a new level of responsibility, which the whole community is so appreciative of. So we presented them with a little gift today just to show how much we really do appreciate their work, especially with this year, all the added extra things that they do for us that they don't always get to hear how much we thank them for.
It's also Teachers Appreciation Week this week, so it's celebrating staff at the high school for all that they do, all that they have done for like COVID and all the obstacles that were thrown their way. So thank you to everyone who is a staff in teaching in North Andover.
In addition, the Drama Guild is preparing to hold its first in-person production since obviously the start of COVID. It will be outside in the North Andover High School student parking lot. It will be, I believe, next weekend from Thursday until Sunday. Tickets will be sold in school next week for $10 each. The senior actors only, but the entire Drama Guild is really, really happy that they can finally hold an in-person performance.
We also wanted to point out that spring sports season began on April the 26th, and our record high 11 spring sports teams have had or will have their first competitions within this next week. We also wanted to highlight the Race Amity Club at the high school, who will be presenting at the National Race Amity Conference in the next few weeks.
And similar, as we're going through finishing up AP exams, seniors are also winding down their senior year, so including Eamon and I. Our last day is going to be on the 28th of May.
It's sad, I know. This is our second to last meeting, but we're looking toward the future, and there's been a weekly meeting of all parties with a vested interest in the senior events and graduation, which is again slated to be outdoors in person on June 4th. So we are all incredibly excited for that. And that is our very brief report for you tonight, and we'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you all. So we'll do our go around, and Ms. Lynch, any questions or comments?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Petrowski?
No questions, just you guys always do such a great job. Thank you.
Mr. McDevitt?
Awesome job. I'll just ask you very quickly, Ethan, you mentioned you had a AP exam today. So if you were to predict, what's our number here? How do we think we did?
So we're hoping 5.
5. All right.
That's what we're hoping, but I can't say anything as of yet. It was a lot of writing, and my handwriting is terrible. So we're just gonna wait and see for this one.
All right. Well, good luck. I don't know if you have other ones. I know Eamon has some. I'm sure Mika does as well, and I'm guessing Lindsay too. So good luck on them. I know I had a very tired student at home today as well. So good job.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. And Ms. Mabley?
Yeah, good luck with those exams and winding down your last month. And I'm guessing that most of you, the seniors, are making if they have not already made their big decisions for next year. And I wish them all good luck with that too.
Thank you. I actually have 2 questions that came to me this week. Do you know if the players in the Drama Guild will be wearing masks during the production?
Yes, I believe they will. Although I don't know for sure, I will be assuming that they will.
Okay, thank you very much. And Eamon, you mentioned the Race Amity Club. Will there be a Race Amity Day this year?
So just because of COVID and the fact that it's so difficult to hold a cultural event online, we've decided that it's not going to happen this year. But next year we are looking forward, or at least the future members are looking forward to it, and hopefully I'll be back to attend.
Terrific. And it might behoove us to mention that Juneteenth is now a state holiday. So on Saturday, the 19th of June, folks can celebrate with their families or, find online activities or other community activities with which to engage with that as well. And graduation, you mentioned, is on the 4th of June. And what happens if it rains?
Please don't ask that. We don't want any.
I'm so sorry. It's going to be a beautiful sunny day. I'm so delighted.
It should be a rain date of the 5th, which it's going to go from an evening event on the 4th to a morning event on the 5th, and then we move right into the car parade from graduation. But we don't want any rain.
No rain. All right, I got that. I'm snapping for no rain. And I'm so thrilled that there's going to be a car parade again because it was so much fun. I hope that we do that forever in North Andover. That's opinion. That's not. So thank you guys. You're welcome to stay. You're also welcome to go. I know there's so much going on in your busy school lives right now that you probably want to move along, but you're welcome always to stay. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I am over to you, Dr. Gilligan, for the superintendent's report.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chair Picard, and great job by the students. Awesome as always. Again, as people have mentioned, it's Educator Appreciation Week, and to say that it's been a challenge this year would be an understatement of the year. I'm just appreciative of every staff member across this district in every single position have really rolled with the punches. They've adapted, they've adjusted, they've gone the extra mile for our kids, and I'm just so appreciative. So thank you so much for all you do on behalf of our students. As you know, we've returned back to school. We've been in quite some time now, it feels like, with elementary, and I know how thrilled the elementary parents are. And we've had the middle school and the high school back. And, as a dad of a middle schooler, I know that they didn't necessarily like getting up that early again. But it's great to have them back and the high school as well. Couple really awesome things that are happening. We met today with our COVID-19 task force, and Cheryl Barzak informed me that we have just shy of 500 kids vaccinated at North Andover High School. So that's out of 960 that are eligible by age at this time, eligible students, and that's just remarkable. So really tremendous job by our nurses, tremendous job by our community partners, Christina Minicucci, State Rep Minicucci, Richie Napolitano, again, with Greater Lawrence Family Health. We tweeted out a few days on Twitter, which is on our website, and people just found there were tons of appointments. That being said, there's more exciting news that Cheryl Barzak and all the nurses, they'll be blasting out shortly. It appears, in the near future that we'll have the ability to run a vaccine clinic for our students 12 and up who choose to be vaccinated. It's completely voluntary when it comes, but as more information becomes available, that's something that we'll be able to offer, and just remarkable. So I will keep you posted on that. There was a good question. Masks, masks are still required on all school grounds. And I also want to point out the MI2A has not relaxed the mask rules too. So if you're a spectator at a sporting event, you should be wearing masks. Typically it's posted, all over. So just that reminder. I do know that Massachusetts, we're really getting to a big number of people vaccinated across the Commonwealth. But I think it's important for us to continue to be vigilant. Parents and families and caregivers have done a remarkable job this year being responsible. And that's what's made us successful in North Andover. They have followed all the rules. They have, kept their students home when sick, or if they had a question, they called the nurse's office to ask. So kudos to the families. We're coming down the home stretch. We're rounding the bend. And I just ask that, as we continue to see improvement across the Commonwealth and as things relax, it's still important that we remember that we keep doing the right things so that we can continue to make this tremendous progress, which is really exciting. And next up, we are on to Dr. Mealy has an update on the school capacity subcommittee survey update. Dr. Mealy.
Okay, let me start presenting here. Basically, what we wanted to review are the survey results. So we did a first public forum last night. We had 6 people from the public. So we're going to continue to try to get the word out to get people to go. I did have a meeting with our consultants, MVG, who indicated it's not surprising that people haven't showed up. They said the result, the participation in the survey was tremendous. We had over 750 participants. They said that's a really good indication that people are aware of what's going on, and based on the comments they made in the surveys, that they're engaged as well. So That was encouraging, but we will still try to get the word out as much as possible for the next 2 meetings. The next one is for those who may be not able to attend during the evening, but can do so during the day. It's going to be Tuesday the 11th from 1 to 3, and then the following Tuesday from 6 to 8. And one of the things we did want to highlight are the results that we've gotten from the survey. They've been pretty clear for us on the subcommittee, and I think to everybody else, and we've summarized those, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. With regards to equity among our elementary schools, not surprisingly, those at Thompson and Sargent are 2 newer schools, and as Dr. Gilligan has reminded us, they're not so new anymore, 20 years old or more now, but they are our newest schools, and they were built for the 21st century, the end of the 20th century, rather than mid-20th century. So they have all the things that you would want an elementary school to have. It's not surprising that their students and the parents of those students feel like they have what they should have, whereas Atkinson, Franklin, and Kittredge, the 3 schools that we know need to be renovated, do not feel like they're up to par to the other schools. So that wasn't surprising. As far as what the community prioritizes with regards to the efforts of these projects and what we might be able to address, again, we've been talking about class size for a long time now, and the community has that as their top priority, both at the middle school and the elementary, followed closely by equity at our schools, and then, while still important, not as much so, the need to minimize redistricting and minimize transitions from one school level to the other. We also asked about 6th grade placement. Not surprisingly, again, people tend to not like change as much, so the current model is the preferred, with the next strongest support behind the idea of a lower and upper middle school, 5th and 6th grade at the lower and 7th and 8th at the upper. And then less support for 6th grade moving to elementary, and even less for 6th grade all by itself. And then finally, with regards to the options, this is consistent with the other responses to the other questions. The existing model had the most support, followed by 2 middle schools. Again, most people have become aware of our overcrowding based on the fact that we've been applying for MSBA support for the middle school. It exists at the elementary school as well, where we've kind of reached the point where we can no longer impact class size like we would like to, but certainly the middle school, people have been aware of that more. So having 2 middle schools had the second most support, and then the lower and upper middle school came after that, and then not as much support, obviously, for 6th grade alone, or the multiple transitions of upper and lower elementary and upper and lower middle school had very little support, as did 6th grade 6th grade moving back to the elementary. Mm-hmm. Any questions?
So, how many results came in from the survey again? I think you
We're
said
up to 768 right now.
Okay. And we blasted that out to, like, from the principals, and I know that I get a number of emails from, I think it's Sarah Brush. Did it go out from the town side as well?
I got it from there too.
Okay.
Yeah.
It went
I
out from the
didn't remember.
superintendent sent it out to all
At school
7,700 something contacts.
Okay.
The town side sent it out on their platform, so thank you so much to the town manager. I really appreciate it. And then when I tweeted it out as well, and it was on the front page of our website, along with
It's on
the
the
front page of the
for
website as
this
well.
one as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was on like George's newsletter for the middle school.
Yeah, I think I remembered. I only have kids at 2 schools now,
Right.
so I
Yeah.
don't see the others. Okay.
Good. Any other questions? I would just ask Dr. Mealy, did you get half of those from the middle school and a third of them, or was it pretty evenly distributed?
It was very evenly distributed. I don't know if it was to this group, but I had mentioned that 30 is usually considered a a good sample size. At 768, we're well above that, but every school had at least 100 parents participate.
That's good.
Yeah. And then not that long ago, I'm still getting the results in. I have over 150. I sent a similar survey to the staff, and so far the results are very consistent with the community.
That's helpful.
Okay.
I think it'll be good to see some of that data in a little more detail and the comments that come in, because I know one of the things that you said was, we didn't want to get to the end and have somebody say, what about this, right? And so kind of going through all of those, I'm sure that, I'm not saying that there's a perfect solution that just popped up, but there may be something that it's just a different twist.
Exactly. Yeah,
So-
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
We said it twice last night in the presentation, to begin the presentation and to end the presentation, asking people, what have we missed? And let us know. However, call, text, email, however you can, you feel comfortable communicating. Throw your ideas out there so that we can consider them. But I'm glad you reminded me. And this presentation, which is what we gave last night for the public forum and will for the others, is available on the webpage.
I was just going to say, I actually watched it this afternoon. What you had last night, I watched it.
Right, both the presentation and the actual meeting last night, the public forum.
Yeah, I watched the actual
available.
public forum this afternoon.
Mhm.
So that was very nice. I had something else I had to do last night.
It would be great if we could link it to the agenda as well, Dr. Mealy.
Even better, we have the nightly news going out tomorrow, Chair Picard, and we can add it right in.
Or link that whole website to
Yep.
this, yeah.
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 Because that's where I found the link to last night's broadcast, if you will, was on the homepage for your subcommittee.
Right.
There's tons of information there. Like, you can't read it all at once. You have to go back a few times, and it's great. It's a lot of stuff.
And if anybody's looking for it on the website, it's got a little icon of a school. It's right at the top of the page for folks. So, all right. Does that conclude the superintendent's report?
No, just
But
one
can
last
we ask
item.
some questions?
Yes, please.
I just,
Oh, hang on, Dr. Gilligan. I think it sounded like Ms. Mabley had some questions to ask.
go ahead.
Yeah, about this, just, I guess, a comment I wanted to make sure people knew, and you just said that that's posted, but also I do agree that people are probably fried right now with information and all this, and wanting to participate but exhausted. But I also think we need to acknowledge, like, it would be in an ideal world, we would give some breathing room and take this up in a few months. We don't have that luxury of time for that. So I think I just wanted to acknowledge that. It's a lot going on right now to also take this on for families and community members, but I don't see any other way around it, I guess, I just wanted to note that.
Right.
I think a lot
Thank
of
you.
families are kind of just getting used to the fact that their kids are back in
That's right.
school, right, and trying to get back into their norms. So, the more that we can say that the survey is still out there and open, right, there hasn't been a close of it, they may get to it, but
Right.
They're adjusting to everything that's new right now.
Right.
Or-
And one of
or
the-
back to new.
One of the people who participated last night said that he was disappointed that there were so few people in attendance, which, I understand that, but I think part of it is just a fatigue situation. Because I've found out about it, I knew about it, and I got information like from 3 different places and saw it on the town's website. Like, so I feel like it's out there a lot, and I'm glad you're going to keep trying to push that.
It also may be the time we had at 6 o'clock is a tough time
Yes.
for families, dinner, sports, and all that.
Yes, that's
So
true.
Daytime, it'll be interesting to see the results of the daytime.
That's
one.
right. But the fact that you can go back and see what your other community members asked,
Right.
I thought that was very helpful that you recorded it, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think too, like we have a double-edged sword in a way where if we were able to go where people were gathering naturally, like if we were having something at the library right after, story time for younger kids, that would be a time that we could engage with those younger, families with younger kids. It would just sort of be a natural moment to capture that. But on the other hand, it might be easier for folks. We did have a comment when we had our community chat that it was great that they could just join online. They didn't have to, find somebody to take care of what was happening at home. They didn't have to, travel someplace or, take time off of work. They could just have it on with them. So I think that's both. Ms. Pietrowski, did you want to weigh in on this?
I don't think so. I just,
Okay.
I think it's good to keep putting it out there, make sure that everybody knows that they can still ask questions and voice their concerns. It's not like, make that, like, and that if they completed the survey, that's not the end of it.
Right. Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Gilligan, I'm back to you.
Right.
Go ahead. I have a question to what Dr. Gilligan said earlier, but I'll let him go.
I was going to say, I'm going to conclude the superintendent's report at this time. But I think really appreciate all the work people have done to this. Oftentimes, you want to solicit input from folks and stakeholders, and this group has done a truly remarkable job really doing so. And particularly, in a challenging year, the participation has been, although it may have been low in numbers on the forum, there are 2 more forums. Really remarkable outreach and people, giving their input. And what's really impressive is the folks we really want the input. So well done.
All right, thank you very much. So the chair's report, I'll just let you all know that we.
Ms. Picard, I have a couple of
yes, I'm
questions for
sorry,
Dr.
Mr.
Gilligan.
McDevitt, go ahead.
So a couple of quick things that I thought you might have covered in the return to school, but maybe that will be coming on the next meeting. But I'm just wondering if you can give us a little bit of an update in terms of how students are and staff are doing. This is the first time we've kind of brought the middle and the high school back in. So I'm curious, how we're doing on mass breaks and meals, snack, all of those things. Those are all very big concerns, specifically at the middle school, on how that was going to go. I hear from my middle schooler that all of that is going relatively well. But if there's more information that you can share, I think that would be great. And then the other one that I'd like to talk a little bit about is regarding athletics at the high school, and a couple of things that are happening there. And so I will share with the committee and the community a conversation that you and I had, Dr. Gilligan, last week. And that was regarding students who are now back in school and their ability to change for athletic practice after school. So we came back from April break, for the high school on Monday and Tuesday. It was hybrid days, and then Wednesday,
Remote.
it was totally remote, and then the high school came back Thursday, Friday. So I am hearing again, this is the conversation that we had, that students there's nowhere for them to change in order to go to practice. So students are changing in cars, they're changing outside, they're hiding behind bushes, they're hiding in sheds, they're hiding in between sheds, trying to find a suitable place to change.
I will add the outhouses.
And the
From the
outhouses,
fall.
the porta potties, thank you. So you and I had a conversation that there would be facilities that would be opened up within the building so that students could change. That was supposed to happen, that did happen for a couple of days. Yesterday was pouring rain, and I know of at least 3 students who went in to speak to an administrator at the high school. I will mention that person if you'd like me to, and said, can you open up a room or a locker room or something that we can change in? And the students were told no, and so they were in hallways, and they had other students basically somewhat guarding privacy shields so that students could change in our hallways. The level of frustration that I have right now is not being conveyed. I'm absolutely furious that we have students who are competing for our high school, and we do not have a place for them to privately change to do that. if my kids can come home, there are a number who cannot, I would say there is no practice. I would walk off the field before I changed in a bush or a porta potty, and I had an administrator at the high school tell me they would not open a room for me to do that. I cannot tell you how unacceptable that is. I cannot tell you how disappointed I am in the administration of the high school.
Mr. McDevitt, well, I know we did speak, and I appreciate that, and I share your same concerns. I equally share those same concerns. I'm glad you've made me aware of this tonight. It was my understanding that after we spoke, I did follow up with the high school that they'd be opening the locker rooms, at 50% capacity across the board. So I do share the same frustration, the same concern that I'm hearing about this now from you, and we'll address it immediately. And
So, go ahead. So my suggestion would be that when Mr. Jackson sends his email out on either Sunday or Friday night, that where students are to change is included in that. And if they find that they are not able to get into that facility, who do they contact? What administrator is in that building, or what coach? What is the order of them? And I will happily take phone calls and emails from any student who is changing in a porta potty, to go and compete for us.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you, Mr. McDevitt. I appreciate what you're saying, and I will address that immediately.
Thank you,
And-
Mr. Picard.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. I also heard a question about how mask breaks and meals are going and how things have gone at the middle school and the high school in general during the school day since the opening last week. Can you give us any information about that, Dr. Gilligan?
Yeah, very good. It seems like last week was a long time ago. We will address the locker rooms. And thank you, Mr. McDevitt. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. That's a top concern. And I'm glad that you brought that up tonight. And then B, I forgot that we haven't been back here since we opened up the high school and the middle school. And, the first day I was a little nervous. It was a lot of traffic, and it reminded me of the first day of school, how it takes a little bit of the buses to run. We had a bus problem where they were late, particularly at North Andover High School, is where they were late the first day. Then the second day, there was still a lot of traffic, but it was like on a rate that was much quicker than our normal learning curve at the beginning of the year. I think we had, some practice this year, so it got a little better the second day, and then the third day was really running pretty smoothly in terms of transportation, traffic. We still had our normal traffic in the morning. But more importantly, the mass breaks, I hear, have been going well. I have to compliment Dr. Mealy with putting up all the tents across the district. I don't know how Dr. Mealy got tents. There are no tents available anywhere, and he got them. He got them up probably, at the exact right time, and he got them up probably on the windiest day of the year here in the Commonwealth. But really awesome job. Even the small ones, I've been under them myself. They provide a lot of cover, so it's been interesting coming back. I think the kids are excited, and we're with some changes, particularly in the distancing quarantine that was sent out this week by the nurses as close contacts. It's really made it a transition back, and our numbers of COVID cases have been low. So we hope that continues. Dr. Mealy.
Yeah, I don't want to take the credit. I have to say that Michelle McHugh, the administrative assistant from my office, has been our procurement expert for COVID for the year, and really stayed on the company to make sure that we got those tents. We did go after them soon, probably sooner than others, and that's why we got them. But also the custodians have been doing a great job of keeping an eye on them and putting them up and making sure they're staying up. And I've never been more aware of the wind than I have been since those have gone up. And it feels like this is the windiest April on record. But yeah, I just want to acknowledge their work.
Yeah, and then just last but not least, really, the work of Erica Murphy and the food services, to work to adapt, adjust, change meals up and put different packages together based on the schedules. Really awesome job, her and her entire team. And just thanks to all the folks. I mean, we completely changed our models of school very quickly. And it's a testament to the hard work and dedication of all the folks here in town. So families alike.
I wanted to comment on the snacks at the middle school because I've had 2 kids who much prefer always bringing their own food. They never really like to buy. And now my 8th grader is very intrigued by and taking the snack every day and is quite fascinated with it. And as a result, has actually tried some new stuff, which who would have ever thought? So I think that's the fact that they're offering it to everyone, and I'm sure there are other kids who normally don't like to take the school food are now doing that, and it's a benefit. So I do appreciate what Erica and her team are doing.
Thank you, Ms. Mabley. Ms. Lynch, anything about the high school or the middle school?
No.
Okay. And Ms. Petrosky?
I don't think so. No, I'm glad Mr. McDevitt brought up the changing issues. I had kind of forgotten about it, but I was glad to hear it.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, Mr. McDevitt, all set?
All set.
Okay. So the chair's report, I just want to let you all know that we did have our community chat on the 28th. It was a morning, I think it was a 9 to 10. We had some familiar faces. We had somebody new. And the topics were the school capacity and the start times for the schools, as well as we asked for some feedback and how people felt about, this opportunity. And it was all positive. So that's something we can consider if we want to continue to do in the future. That was our last one for this year. And I appreciate Ms. Mabley was at all of those this year. And I think in total we had about it's like 34, I think, people came. We had a whole lot of people the first one, fewer people the second one, and of course fewest people on the third one. So the other piece of the chair's report, I want to turn to Ms. Mabley about the Hall of Fame Selection Committee.
Yes, that's right. The application window has closed, and so I'm working on, I've contacted the teachers union to get a teacher representative, and we'll be working on getting other people to be on that committee, and we will be looking at the applications.
And if somebody wanted to serve on that committee, how would they?
So there is one community member, and if they are interested if anybody who is watching tonight, or if any of you know of anybody who would be interested in participating, it's not a huge time commitment, but you may certainly email me at my school committee email, which is mabley@northandoverpublicschools.com, and I would be happy to talk with you about participating in what would probably be a 1-hour meeting with some reading in advance.
Thank you. And I would just remind all the members that Bev did, Ms. Zagari sent out a doodle poll for our availability in the summer. So if you haven't had a chance to respond to that, please respond to that. And, we'll put some dates on hold that are best for the group, and then people can plan their summer activities and not have to worry about trying to schedule that in. And that is all I have for the chair's report, unless somebody has a question or comment that they need to add at this time. Hearing none, we'll move on to old business, which is the second reading of the recommendations on the town meeting warrant article. And I think that's you, Dr. Mealy.
Oh, it is?
Oh,
so
it doesn't have to be.
No, it's more of these are the articles that are asked every year for school committee to approve. So I don't know what I could add to that.
Okay. So does anybody on the committee have questions or comments about, we went over these last time, and I guess Dr. Gilligan presented to us last time on this. Do people have questions or comments on these? Ms. Lynch?
No comments.
And Ms. Petrowski?
No, thank you.
Mr. McDevitt?
Nope.
Ms. Mabley?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I am looking for a motion to accept the recommendations on town meeting warrant as presented in the packet. So Dr. Gilligan, do we have to take those one at a time? Or
I
can we
think so.
do them as a whole that we're gonna vote in favor of or recommend favorable action?
You can do them all, just in the motion, say Articles 2, 3, and 4.
Right.
Okay, so
2, 3, and 4 and 24.
And 24, sorry, yep.
Yep.
Mr. McDevitt, you want to do that?
Sure. So I guess you speak, you get the work.
Yes.
So I'll move that we approve as presented in the packet for town warrant, Articles 2, 3, 4, and 24.
Second.
Favorable action.
Favorable
Okay, so
action. Sorry.
Moved by Mr. McDevitt and seconded by Ms. Lynch. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Lynch,
Yes.
Ms. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Mably,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes, so that carries 5-0. And our next order of business is the second reading of the FY21 revolving account on the budget adjustment.
Yeah, just a quick reminder, we didn't know going in because of the pandemic what it was going to look like. As it has turned out for food services, it's been more than anticipated because of all the federal reimbursement, all the meals that they have delivered over the course of the year, which I've lost count of how many they've done. And so in order to meet those expenses, we have to increase a couple of their line items, but their revenue certainly offsets, the federal reimbursement certainly offsets the expenses.
So I would look for a motion.
So I'll move to approve the revolving account budget adjustments for the food service revolving account for fiscal year 2021 as presented in the packet.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Mr. McDevitt, seconded by Ms. Lynch. And is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Lynch,
Yes.
Ms. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Mably,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes, so that carries 5-0 as well. And we're on to new business. As we've talked about so many times this year, all of our school employees have done so much to ensure the success of our schools and our students this year. And so I took the liberty to draft a School Employee Appreciation Week proclamation. And I would ask that somebody would make a motion first to waive the rules so that we can vote on this tonight, and then a motion to accept it, then we'll have discussion and then a vote. So could I?
I'll make
Go
a
ahead.
motion. I'll make a motion to suspend the rules so that we can consider the where'd it go? The school 2021 School Employee Appreciation Week proclamation document as presented.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Ms. Mably, seconded by Mr. McDevitt. Any discussion?
I just
And hearing none.
No.
Yep, go ahead.
I just have a question as to why we're
This
making
is-
it the singular week and not like the first week of May every year.
We're just voting on waiving the rules first.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
It's just all the process stuff. So let's do a roll call vote on waiving the rules. Then we'll move that, and then we'll talk about that. Sound good?
Yep.
All right.
Sorry.
So Ms. Lynch.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Petrowski.
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt.
No.
Ms. Mably.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So that carries 4-1 with Mr. McDevitt voting no to waive the rules. So I would entertain a motion to accept as printed in the packet, and then we'll go into discussion.
So I'll make a motion to accept the 2021 School Employee Appreciation Week proclamation as written.
Second.
So it's moved by Ms. Mably and seconded by Ms. Petrowski.
Yes.
Okay. And so now's the time, Ms. Lynch, for that conversation.
Okay. Do you need me to repeat the question?
I didn't
no,
hear it. I didn't
Okay.
hear the question.
So my
Go
question
ahead,
is,
go ahead, Ms.
what was
Lynch, repeat
what's the
question.
reason we're naming just this 1 week in 2021 as opposed to making this the first week of May every year?
It just didn't occur to me. Is there an amendment that you'd like to make? Or we could take that up at another point in time?
So the only thought that I have is National Teacher Day, and I did just Google it, is always the first Tuesday of the first full week of May. So this year it would be May 4th. So I would say, you know, we should probably do this as a annual
Recognition or?
yeah, thank you. I couldn't think of the word. Recognition, proclamation? I don't know.
And this year, May 7th is School Lunch Hero Day. And last week was, or perhaps the week before, was Administrative Assistants and Office Workers Day. So that was why we kind of pulled them all together because, you know,
Yep.
again, all these people are working for the benefit of students. Certainly not trying to detract from any of those individual days, but as a body, we can recognize all of them. That was my thinking. Ms. Lynch, does that satisfy your question?
Yes, I guess I see more value in having this as a week every year that we recognize them rather than a week where the last day is tomorrow.
I agree. I can certainly see that. For this year, I hope maybe we could just do this, and in a future year, we can figure out what the language would be that would be appropriate so that it would be an annual event, or we could just put it on our annual schedule of conversations, so we could have it, earlier in April.
I mean, I can see a value in labeling this one 2021 and next year is 2022 so that it's, identified this is the year that these people are signing or what have you, but that I don't think that changes the fact that we'd like to do it annually. I think it's a nice thought.
Would folks indulge me to read it out, because I'm not sure, everybody who's watching, and just to me, I would love to say these words into the atmosphere so that our school employees can hear it. So if there would be no objection, I would just read through the document. Hearing no objections, so I'll just read it. It reads the 2021 School Employee Appreciation Week Proclamation. Whereas all school employees in North Andover work to meet the mission of our district, to cultivate a respectful community of engaged learners, insightful thinkers, and effective communicators, and to uphold our raised values. Whereas the education of our youth is imperative to individuals, to families, to our community, to Massachusetts, to our nation, and to our world. Whereas the school employees work directly with our students, staff, parents, volunteers, business partners, and community members. Whereas school employees are responsible for the transportation, supervision, nutrition, social emotional learning, and general well-being of our children. Whereas school employees provide direct instruction of essential standards and skills across disciplines so that students may actively explore materials, find meaning, and share knowledge, insight, and creativity. Whereas school employees create opportunities for students to follow their interests through co-curricular activities, leadership, and teamwork. Whereas school employees ensure the smooth operation of our offices, the maintenance of buildings and property, and the safety of our staff and students, and the community trusts them as important messengers about our schools. Whereas our community depends on school employees to serve students and other staff, often in challenging circumstances. Whereas school employees with their diverse talents and true dedication nurture our youth throughout their school years. Whereas a pandemic challenged every aspect of our school district in 2020, 2021, we, the members of the North Andover School Committee, proclaim May 3 through 7, 2021 to be School Employee Appreciation Week in North Andover, Massachusetts. Encourage all members of our community to join in this observance, recognizing the dedication and hard work of these individuals. Signed by our hands on the 6th day of May, 2021. So I think that last whereas that mentions the pandemic, it is, of course, all of our fervent hope that we shall not have an annual pandemic. So an annual proclamation might be different, and other committees might want to have some different language that they might use in a proclamation.
And perhaps in the future, we would do this earlier so it happens before this week. I know you can't
exactly.
think up something, you didn't think it up, so that's fair enough. But maybe we do it so that it's almost like launching the appreciation window.
So it would be annually in our second April meeting.
Or even earlier.
Yeah, because if we do first and second read, so first April meeting. So noted. Ms. Zagari, can you please note that for our document that reminds us what we need to do annually? And if there's no further discussion, we can move into a roll call vote. Hearing no discussion, I will start with Ms. Lynch,
Yes.
Ms. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Mably,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So Dr. Gilligan, can you please ask Ms. Zagari to send this signed document, and I believe that there's a copy in the room with you all tonight, to send this to all school employees?
Yes, we'll take care of that.
Thank you, Dr. Gilligan. And if it can go out tomorrow before the weekends, that would be fabulous. So we are on to our next new business, which is the first reading of the school choice participation for 2021-2022. And I turn to you, Dr. Gilligan.
So members, you know we come every year with this by law. We have to. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education requires that each year the school committee, after holding a public hearing, consider whether the district will participate on being a receiving district and participating in school choice. This is the first read with the public hearing scheduled at the next school committee meeting with then a vote. And as you know, class size is what's challenged us here in North Andover for years. So my recommendation is that we do not participate in school choice in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay, and we are not voting tonight, but we certainly do want to get any questions, comments about this out. And we will have the public hearing on May 20th when we next meet. That had been originally scheduled for today, but we wanted the community to have time to hear this, think about it, and do the public hearing on the 20th, which is our usual practice. We usually have the public hearing just before the second read and vote. So just the go around, if any questions or comments, Ms. Lynch?
No.
Ms. Petrowski?
Just to clarify, just for my own general knowledge, if we did participate, is there like a number of students that, like, is there a cap, or is it just unlimited, or?
Yeah, so if we participated, what you could see is if you go onto the Department of DESE website, they have the towns and communities that do participate, and some are full participation at every grade level, and others offer participation for people to join in the school choice at specific grade levels year by year. So under the law, we have to take a vote on it, because if we do not by June 1st, we automatically default into being a community of school choice.
Okay. Is there any different kind of like funding that comes in from that, or is it just not change?
Well, we receive Chapter 70 funding for each student. The challenge for us here in North Andover is the space.
Yep. Okay.
Thus, the subcommittee work that's going on now.
Thank you.
And Mr. McDevitt?
No questions.
Ms. Mably?
Nope.
Okay, and I don't have any questions either. So we'll take this up again on May 20th for a second read. And we are on to the separately budgeted recovery services plan. Dr. Gilligan.
Great. Thank you so much. Dr. Mealy, if you could go to the second slide. Great. This is really exciting. The state just came out this week with some recommendations that they want to start to work with school districts around recovery services and helping them plan for some acceleration academies in the summer and some ideas and thoughts for next year. So I'm really appreciative to all of the folks who've been working on this. But I did want to mention the most important thing as we've got back to school is developing and establishing the routine and the norms and the relationships, particularly around SEL, and we'll hear from Nikki very shortly. But I spent some time last Friday with Rick Gorman, and we both were talking about this, and we couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with what he was saying to me, is that SEL is the most important part of return to school. And I just want to start this out with strong, healthy relationships are the single greatest resource for supporting readiness to learn, resiliency, and mental and emotional well-being. I will not steal all of Nikki's thunder because she has quite a bit to cover there. All right, Dr. Mealy. So in the presentation tonight, and we'll be back next time as well, just talk a little bit about how we've been planning, the importance of social emotional learning, the assessment and data with Ms. Marks and her team and working with the principals, professional development and curriculum resources, move it forward with staffing, budget, and then summer programming. I mean, I think it's really, for us, it's really critical that we know that this has impacted kids everywhere, and all kids, and kids across all of our schools, across the Commonwealth, across the country. And for us, it's really important. We know that some groups of students have been disproportionately impacted by this. So it's really critical that we can, use research-based, evidence-based programs and things such as Acceleration Academy, along with other offerings to make a difference. And besides, we'll touch a little bit on summer programming tonight with some dates. Ms. Marks will go through a little bit of that at the end. But then more importantly, when we have everyone back, really making a difference next year. And I feel really fortunate. This is amazing that working so closely with the town manager to have this opportunity to do so that we can hire counselors, interventionists, teachers, special educators, and others to provide additional time and supports for students, build staff capacity, and also have and gain additional curriculum resources and materials necessary to do so. So really outstanding. Recovery services, so we talk a little bit about the planning team. So, I mean, just a tremendous amount of time has gone into reopening school. So I don't know how all these folks have pulled it off, but, the work Lorene has been doing, particularly, she'll talk a little more about the partnership with Boston College, looking at all the data, looking with the, the leadership team in central office, the principals, the curriculum coordinators and coaches, the staff, particularly the ones who are interested in working with us this summer. And then we've also been using an outside consultant, Dr. Curtis Bates. He's a retired superintendent, and we plan to have him in to our next meeting as well. So, quite a bit has gone into this, and I really just, what's really important is that, this has impacts, kids differently and in different ways across all levels and grades and schools. And the most important thing we can do is provide them with opportunities, and particularly the structure of next year with this amazing number of staff members to be able to make that difference and impact everybody in a positive way. And it's just a remarkable opportunity to do so. And there's some really strong planning and awesome things that could happening for the summer. So it's been really a pleasure to plan for this. It's been refreshing looking, as a former doctoral student who did a lot of research. It's been really fascinating in the last few months reading about, although this is the first time in the history of the world this has happened, I've been learning a lot reading the research from Hurricane Katrina, and particularly kids who have been out of school. And, although, they found, particularly in that instance, that while students initially experience learning loss, the persistence of these losses depends on the receiving environment, and really that losses fade the most after a year when students return to stable schools. and they don't have that support in SEL and the opportunity for intervention. And then losses tend to persist, and particularly in math, when students enter chaotic places or places where they don't have routine or feel cared for, which is no surprise. I mean, these are things we've known for a long time. So having said that, I'd like to turn it over to our Director of Social Emotional Learning, Nikki Murphy, to really talk about the importance of this. Nikki.
Great, thank you. Is somebody going to go through the presentation, or am I flipping through it?
Nope, Dr. Mealy.
Oh, okay. All right, I am going to turn off my video because I can never see the PowerPoint when my video's on for some reason, so sorry. Let me see. All right, there we go. Now I can see it. Okay, thank you to the committee for providing me the opportunity to speak tonight about the social, emotional, and mental health needs of students moving forward. To kind of frame the conversation, obviously we're talking about a recovery plan while we're still in a pandemic, so I think it's important to know that the data I'm going to be reviewing tonight is based on kind of a moving target with plenty of unknowns, and it therefore is pretty fluid. The SEL data is going to help us plan for the short term for our recovery plan, but it also will help us plan our long-term goals to really create systemic, sustainable change, as well as I think help us to be better prepared for the next community, state, or nationwide crisis. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So part of our district strategic plan as it relates to SEL is to create a district-wide data management system so that all the data SEL department staff collect individually can be housed in one place. The plan is to have that data management system in place for next school year. We had a plan to have it in place the end of last year, but obviously with COVID, things got a bit sidetracked. On this slide, you are going to see the data sources that we looked at for this presentation, but there are multiple pieces of data that aren't included in this presentation that would provide a bit of a more comprehensive picture of the extensive kind of social, emotional, and mental health needs of students moving forward. We chose to compile the most relevant data from these specific key areas. So we're going to look at universal screening and the youth risk behavior survey, 504 referrals, IEP referrals, tier 2 and 3 program referrals, SAT referrals, and hospitalizations. Based on that data for the school year 2021-22, there's some key areas of concern. And again, this is a snapshot. There's other areas, but these were some that we found based on the data were important to really take a look at in more depth. We're expecting, an increase in school refusal behavior. We've already seen this year online classroom refusal being an issue with kids attending, not logging onto class. An increase in mental health symptoms, of course, in our kids that had pre-existing conditions, but also in new students. And then, with the academic demands and some of sort of the gaps in learning and just the difficulties some kids have had with remote learning, we're seeing, and we think we'll continue to see an increase in student social emotional response and behaviors. I put in there, the executive functioning deficits. I think that not having the 5-day-a-week structure of in-class schooling for some kids, we've seen an increase in some executive functioning deficits, which of course is then resulting in some social emotional responses and presentations with some of our kids. And then an increase in tier 2 student needs. Those are the kids that were already at risk. And we really think we're going to need some more targeted supports for this student population. Go to the next slide. Thank you. So, and one thing actually I'll say too is that we noticed that with less students in the building all week and one day without any students in the building at all, students were requesting access to mental health services less this past year. But we sit on a mental health task force, myself, Lorene does, and Cheryl Barzak, and with some folks from Andover, Helen Picard's on there as well. And the physicians that are on there on that task force had talked about that they have doubled their prescriptions for antidepressants this year for kids versus antibiotics that they've been prescribing for kids. And so we've kind of concluded that parents have brought a lot of their kids to their PCP for help, as opposed to, coming to see their counselors just because they haven't been in school as often. There's other reasons as well, but that's sort of one thing. So We have seen another area of concern is that if kids have returned in the past month, we've definitely seen an increase in anxiety, especially with some of the younger kids, around anxiety for a number of reasons, but some is due to a fear of COVID, kids being too close to them. So we're starting to see an uptick. And that's why I say this data is so fluid, because with every month and with every day as things change, we're going to continue to see an increase in certain symptoms, most likely, and a decrease in others. So I want to start here really quick and just thank all the SEL staff counselors in the SEL department for partnering with me, and also the building principals. We're going to talk about some data from the fall of 2020. So right away, when we came into this school year in September and October, we administered for the first time 2 universal mental health screeners. One is called the GAD-7, which is this data that you're looking at here. And that assesses students who are at risk for anxiety. And even though we as administrators, we compile the data, I analyze it, helps us to drive programming. It's really the SEL department staff working together that provide all the frontline follow-up services and interventions for the students. So we just want to thank and acknowledge their extremely hard work. This is the first year we've administered universal screeners in North Andover, and obviously it was a challenging year to do it. So it really was a great team effort. I want to also make sure everyone understands that these 2 screeners that I'm going to talk about that we administered to get this baseline data for where kids were at when they came into the school year this year are not diagnostic tools. They're 2 scales that are sound, have sound psychometric properties. They're used to identify students who may require mental health services or support, but they do not provide us with any diagnoses. So I just think that's important. They're for use in a school setting. And this one, the GAD-7 that assesses anxiety, is broken down into 3 categories. We're looking at mild, moderate, and severe. We administered as a pilot, normally, just so you know, too, in schools when they do this the first year, they might pick 1 grade in an entire district. We were pretty ambitious because we felt it was important to get as much baseline data for as many kids as possible, given the pandemic, where we chose 5th grade, 7th grade, and then all kids in high school, grades 9 to 12, and administered this. And so, as you can see, the severe and the moderate are the groups that, the green and the yellows, where we are most concerned when we look at those numbers. And
Nikki, can
yes.
I interrupt for a second?
Yep.
This is showing us risk for students, not symptoms. We're not talking about severe or mild symptoms. We're talking about severe or mild risk. Is that correct?
Okay, so we're actually, we are not, yes, we are talking about risk, and we're looking for kids at risk. However, when they fall into the severe and moderate range, then you actually are seeing kids who are presenting with a lot of symptoms, in this case of anxiety. However, this is a tool that, because there are multiple anxiety disorders, this is a tool that you can't say, oh, if they fell into severe or moderate, that means they meet the criteria for panic disorder with agoraphobia, for example. I think one of the most important things to understand about the difference between a school-based assessment like this and a traditional diagnostic evaluation that diagnoses is that in addition to symptoms, when you diagnose a mental health condition, you're also looking for things like frequency and severity of symptoms. So in order to diagnose, panic disorder with agoraphobia, you would have to not just look at symptoms, but you would also look at severity. And by that, I mean, it has to show clinically significant impairment or social or occupational functioning. You're also looking for frequency. The student would have to have those symptoms for about a 6-month period of time. So that's why it's important to know that when we look at this, yes, there are symptoms that these kids are presenting if they fall in that moderate or severe range. However, I can't look at this data and say this student has, generalized anxiety disorder or, another specific anxiety disorder. Does that help clarify?
It does. And the symptoms are not being measured here
No.
as well. So if you're at severe risk, you might have moderate symptoms that you're presenting, perhaps.
Correct.
It's not measuring the severity of the symptoms. It's only measuring the severity of the risk.
Correct. Yes. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. Thanks, Jim. So this is the PHQ-9. This was the second one that we administered. Again, this is looking at data from the fall. We want to get baseline data where kids were coming in after being out of school for the end of last year. This assesses risk for depression or depression symptoms And we only administered this to 5th grade. We would have loved to do middle school and high school. However, given the pandemic and the ability we had to administer and the structures we had to administer, we couldn't do administration of this to kids on during remote days. And the reason for that is that there are a couple of questions in here that really have to do with, harming the self. And so you cannot administer something like this to a child who is remote at home. They answer because we see the data right away. And so right away you admit, if you get a kid that says, yes, I want to harm myself, or yes, I think about suicide, you need to immediately, we've got the counseling team immediately there to meet with those kids within that same day. And obviously kids being remote, you can't administer something like this. So we did it with 5th grade because we were able to administer with 5th graders while they were in the school setting. But at middle and high school, we were not able to do that. So we expect to see very low numbers of depression. So these numbers are not surprising to me. You see higher numbers of kids at risk for depression when they hit middle and high school.
And again, this now is showing us symptoms, not risk.
No. This is showing kids at risk for depression.
Okay, again, this is an at-risk, not a symptom, but we can gather that those who are at moderate or moderate to severe risk are likely showing symptoms.
Correct.
But this screening does not screen for symptoms.
No, and it doesn't tell you this child has major depressive disorder.
Okay.
It just tells you, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt, and I don't know if other members have questions, but this is all 100% new for us, and it's a lot of vocabulary. It's a dense presentation. So forgive my interruptions, and if there are other members who need a clarification of what we're looking at, I would invite folks to. I can't see the room, so I can't see if you raise your hand, but just do like polite people do and say, excuse me, I need clarification.
Yes, please interrupt at any time to ask any questions. I understand it's new information, and so please feel free.
Thank you.
Sure. So this is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and this is administered, for those who aren't familiar with this, but I think the committee is, it's administered typically in most districts every 2 years. So it's only administered at the high school level, grades 9 to 12. And we last administered in 2019, and that data was shared out with the committee at that time. We're administering again at the high school on May 12th, next week. So the relevant data for this presentation from the YRBS is just the depression data. And again, this looks at, it's not any kind of diagnostic data, but it gives us a good risk assessment for how many kids may be struggling with some depression symptoms. And so, of course, we don't have the 2021 data, which will be really interesting to have next week. But I thought it was important just to put up here because it's anonymous. And based on the depression data that we got from this 2019 YRBS, that really prompted my recommendation to administer universal screening like the PHQ-9. Because those are not anonymous. The PHQ-9 and the GAD-7 are not anonymous the way that the YRBS is. So if you think about it, if you get a bunch of data and it's anonymous, we can't really intervene as effectively or in a targeted manner if we don't know who it is that's feeling a certain way. So that said, the YRBS is really great data to support the need for like universal and SEL educational approach to help reduce rates of depression or kids who are at risk for depression. So let's see, what else is important to say here? I think it's important to say that I'm part of a group throughout Massachusetts that has all the directors of SEL on it. And many districts are not even administering any of these things this year, which I think is, they're struggling. They've got a lot on their plates, but it's wonderful that we're doing it in North Andover because I think it's going to help us really hit the ground running in the fall with some really great, strong data that's going to help us be able to help kids in a targeted fashion. I think it's also one other thing I want to say about the 2019 data is that it also prompted our partnership with the NAN Project. And for those who don't know what the NAN Project is, it's a group, again, this is free, And they come in and they do some training for teachers. They work with kids around how to spot signs and symptoms of depression. I would also say based on the 2019 data, and I'm guessing the 2021 data will be similar, hopefully not worse, but around depression, it helps us to drive sort of professional development, and it helps us say, all right, we really need to help teachers learn a lot more about just seeing the signs and symptoms of what depression might look like in their classroom so that they can then reach out to counselors and we can get kids the support that they need. And then additionally, the last thing on the slide is that there's something called the YHS now that's actually out of the Department of Public Health. And it's the middle school version of the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And we've spoken with the principal, George, at the middle school. And the plan is to try to administer the YHS at NAMS in the fall of 2021 to help us get some more data for kids at the middle school level, which I think is really important if we can get it. Thank you. So this shows us 504 plans, again, just for social emotional. The expectation really is that these numbers are going to increase next year when kids are back in school full time. This data, just so you know, is from about 3 weeks or a month ago before kids had returned to school. And I think also because 504s focus a lot on accommodations, without kids in school as much, we think this may be also why we had less referrals for 504s this year. You can go to the next slide, please.
And just a quick question. A 504 is it only for social and emotional, or are there other things that are included in there as well? And these are just the ones for social and emotional?
So these are just the ones for social emotional, and there are 504s for other issues as well.
Okay, so you've pulled those out, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
all right. I know what a 504 is. I just wanted to be sure if you were pulling them out or if this was all inclusive. Thank you.
No. Sure, no problem. And that's the same thing here for the IEPs. This is just for social emotional.
Okay.
And so, yes. So you'll see we're separated into categories. The blue is a child who has, children who have IEPs where the primary impairment is social emotional. The yellow is kids who have IEPs where the secondary impairment is social emotional. So again, they're still going to need the services and supports. And then the red bar is IEPs this year where there were new referrals, where the referrals made because of social emotional concerns. And so just to give you one example from when you look at the high school, I do have data from 2019 from the high school. And in that school year, if you look at the little red bar, you see there were 17 initials where social emotional was primary. We're actually all still waiting on consent forms to be signed from parents for 13 additional initial evaluations for social emotional. So that number is really 30 this year. But also last year, just to give you something to compare it with, there were only 2 initial evaluations where the primary was social emotional. So we went from 2 to 30. So that's obviously a big jump. And you can go to the next slide, please. So here we're looking at Tier 2 and Tier 3 social emotional learning programs in the district. If you notice, the Tier 2 programs, there are no Tier 2 programs at the elementary level. That's why it's blank there. And at NAMS we have, and at the high school, we have 2 Tier 2 social emotional programs. Those are our focus programs. These are amount of kids that are in the program currently. And then the red bars are the new referrals for those 2 Tier 2 programs, both at the middle school and the high school. Our Tier 3 SEL programs, when you look at the elementary, that bar that says 37, the blue bar, that's both the TIP program. We have 2 Tier 3 social emotional programs at the elementary level. So that's the TIP program at Kittredge and the Thrive program at Thompson. So that's why that's such a high number. So that's the combination of two SEL programs. We had 5 new referrals, and then at NAMS, you can see we have 18 kids in the program, 3 new referrals, and at the high school, we have 18 kids in the program with 15 new referrals. And so here you're looking at SAT, student assistant team referrals. So that's to help kids that are at risk and fall into that Tier 2 service category area, and then some hospitalizations. These numbers are from about 3 weeks ago. So I would also say that, they've potentially gone up. These are pretty standard. I would say the SAT numbers are a little bit lower than we normally see, but again, kids weren't in as much. We didn't see as many behavioral issues because we had less kids in the building. The hospitalizations and evaluations are fairly similar to what we've seen in previous years. I will say that some kids, they really did better having less days in school. It was easier for them, so, which I know we've all talked about. And then you can go to the last one, thank you. So based on this data, you know, there's a lot of things that the SEL department does, and these are just some of the recommendations based on this data that I presented today. So the best approach is always that comprehensive, you know, systemic. It includes integration of SEL best practices on all 3 tiers. On tier 1, you're going to see, I'm talking about data collection. I think we need to re-administer the universal screeners and add a few grades, including getting the PHQ-9, the depression inventory, for some of the older grades, because I think that's going to be very telling for us. And then, you know, we're doing the YRBS, as you know, in next week at the high school, and I'm recommending the YHS at NAMS in the fall. In terms of systems, we really do need to establish a data management system where we can house all this SEL data in one place. It will make things a lot easier to look at from year to year where we start, and then once we administer different interventions and different programming, is it effective as we do progress monitoring, and without having it all in one place, it makes it pretty disjointed. The structures, I would recommend keeping existing structures in place and utilizing those for direct SEL instruction. So for example, advisory, morning meeting, those structures are really important. We've been able to utilize them this year to really integrate SEL in a more explicit, direct way, which has been helpful. Certain practices that we do, like school-wide morning meditation, I think those things have helped a lot with the mental health stuff we've seen around anxiety and trauma. And then we want to expand the use of responsive classroom at the elementary level, and that would include 2 responsive classroom facilitators to help sort of get some initial training done and train new teachers as well that are new to the district. Professional development is always key. As always, it needs to be district-wide. I always say it needs to focus on the top 3, and by the top 3, I mean the top 3 mental health concerns we see in this district and in most districts, which is anxiety, trauma, and depression. I think adult SEL, continuing to do that, is going to be really important, and SEL integration in the classroom, which is in line with what we wanted to do this coming year with the district SEL strategic plan. And capacity building with the teaming, so we have school-based SEL teams in all the schools, SEL data teams. Some of them are very new, and I work with all of them and have started the training with some and gotten more extensive in the training, but that really needs to help us build capacity. We need to look at sort of existing and new data and really help develop some strong school-based SEL action plans, which we've been doing all this work, but it needs to be continued, and more training needs to happen. At tiers 2 and 3, that's that more targeted and intensive service delivery approach. I would recommend some staff, and I think we're going to talk about that later in the presentation. Ideally, people with a clinical background, because we're seeing such an increase in mental health symptoms. In terms of the tier 2 and 3 programs, so since I've been here the past 4 years, creating some new programs, the existing programs have done a tremendous amount of training. And now I think we're at the place where, you know, you're always working out kinks with program development, but we really need to improve progress monitoring and data collection in those programs. We want to expand community partnerships. We have a lot of them now. Like I mentioned, the NAN project, which focuses on depression, but I always try to bring in free programs that can help address the mental health and social emotional needs of kids. And we have all these partnerships with various organizations, mental health organizations that have provided telehealth this year. We're probably going to continue the telehealth model as opposed to having them come into the school next year, but we'll just have to see where we're at. It's actually been great because it's allowed us to have more kids be treated because they don't have to get rides to different places, and it gives more flexibility to provide those mental health services in the school setting. And then we've got some partnerships with probably, I think, 6 or 7 universities that I work with, and we're increasing the interns next year to have more kind of all hands on deck. We know we're going to need, and we need more people that we can help us really with the mental health needs of the kids. So there's a lot more that I could say, but those are kind of some of the key points. And I just want to thank the committee for giving me the chance to talk about this and open it up to any questions people might have.
Thank you, Nikki. We really appreciate it. So just to be orderly, I'll start with Ms. Lynch. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Nikki. That was really good. I can say that in my professional life, the number of new calls I get is majority of school refusal. So I think you're spot on with that. And I am so glad we're ahead of this and addressing this now.
Did you say refusals?
School refusal, kids not wanting to go to school. Just,
Oh, okay, all
Yeah.
right. I thought you meant like not providing some support.
Schools refusing to provide service.
Yes, okay.
No. Kids refusing to
Okay.
go to school because they're not
Gotcha.
emotionally
All right.
capable.
Thank you. Ms. Petrowski.
It's a lot of information. It was awesome. And it's really encouraging to hear that all of these steps are already being put into place. I know as a teacher, I have often begged for PD on how to correctly and appropriately, work with students who have experienced trauma or depression or anxiety. So this is, I can't stress the PD enough. So I don't really have any questions because I'm still processing, but I'm really encouraged to see all of this happening. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Petrowski. And we will have a chance, talk about this again next week. This is only our first read. So, Mr. McDevitt.
Yep, so again, to echo the others, great presentation, a lot of information here, a lot to digest. So I really appreciate you kind of putting this together in a good way to have us out there. So two quick questions that I have is, one, the data that you have on these students, like where is that stored and who has access to that?
So that's one of the reasons that I would love to have a data management system. In previous districts, I've used something called Swiss, but that's a data management system that's specific to what we call PBIS, positive behavioral intervention supports, and we don't use that in North Andover. So there are other data management systems that we could use. So right now, what's happening is I have access to the data, and it's confidential data, obviously, but there's nothing. Essentially what happens is my staff, pre-K to 12 in the SEL department, they collect data in various different data points from their various schools. They send it to me, and then I basically put everything together, compile everything. So it's not something that teachers have access to. It's all confidential for the SEL department, but there isn't a data management system where everything is put in one place. I've also used it in previous districts. I've taken SEL data. Like I like to sit down with the SEL teams and say, okay, here's a kid with an attendance issue, low GPA, or struggling with grades. And now we also see that he has high scores on the PHQ-9 and the GAD-7. So is there, when we can compare it to other student data that we already have in one system, that's very helpful, because we can say, well, maybe this kid's attendance is due to depression, or maybe his low grades are due to, and then that helps us create an intervention plan that's more effective and more targeted. But right now it's really housed with me.
Okay. So that's good. I mean, I like thinking about it the way that you just presented, right? So maybe there's other data points, right, which then help you with all of that. The reason I asked the question is, I'm not sure if all of it is, but there's certainly a good level of that information that I would assume is covered under HIPAA, and who has access to that. And my concern with it is, we have seen some communities who've had ransomware, and things that were taken, right? I'm not sure that data was necessarily taken, but the vulnerability of that data. And so that was kind of the reason for the question that's there. So I mean, I think that that's something, as we look to this, we'll have to bring Mike Grant into the conversation to ensure that we have that very well locked down. And then my only other thought was, this is excellent, but there's a lot of information here. It's in the middle of another presentation, which has a lot of information. So I would love to just see us kind of have this as kind of a separate focus point in a future meeting, because I think we'll be able to ask a lot more questions and get into more of the things and maybe pull out, what you might need for support for that. So
that is on our annual calendar of events. Doesn't that usually happen in June?
That's the,
Does anybody remember?
Yeah, I mean, typically we have Nikki in for a different piece, but this tied so closely with this, and I think it ties so closely the work Nikki does with Marcy and Lorene, and they may even have some comments on it, because it's not just one thing in isolation, it's all these things together.
Correct.
And particularly some of the screeners, it might not mean anything, but it gives that extra look. And then whether we're using the early warning indicator system from the state or these other things, when you piece it together, it's just better to support kids, especially who are struggling.
Yeah, and it might be good to do some things in the fall and the spring as well, as we see how well things are doing. But great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. And Ms. Mabley?
I'm just actually a little bit tied to what Mr. McDevitt just asked. So at a certain point, though, if you and your team get certain information at a certain point with certain kids, do you not have to loop in the teacher or help direct the teacher on how to best support the student? And how does that work?
So the way that it works specifically with the screeners is what we say to the teachers, and there's sort of a script. So there's a lot of training that goes into what I had to do in the beginning of this year to train the staff, because my staff in the SEL department, because they had never administered a universal screener before. And teachers, of course, once they knew we were doing it, said, well, what if I have a kid in my class that that's high risk? And, they had questions. So we use a very generic script. And basically the same way we would with any child who's struggling, we don't say anything about, they scored super high on the PHQ-9 or on the GAD-7. We just say something very generic, and they were all taught to say the same thing to the teachers, because we have to give the teachers a heads up and let them know, because they're on the front lines, they're our eyes and ears, and it's so important for them, and they want to be able to support the students. So they basically, my counseling staff or myself would say to the teacher, you have a child in your class that's going through some tough stuff, and we just want you to keep an eye out, and if you see anything that's of concern, then please let us know, and then we take it from there. And we kept it that simple.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Mabley. I echo what my colleagues have said. Really extensive and helpful information. I did stop you to ask some questions along the way, and I always encourage, we all get so comfortable with our own vocabulary that, early in the presentation you said something about SATs, which, are tests to get into college, so it took me a while to find out. Later in your presentation you said those are student assistance teams, and I said, oh yes, I remember that. But so writing out some of those things like RC, you're named a couple of staff that we want to maybe bring in for RC, which is responsive classroom. So some of those clarifiers, and on those charts, is it risk, is it behavior, what is this data we're looking at? Those are, you just gave some really great, helpful information, and I appreciate it. And just, we all need to be mindful all the time that the vocabulary we use in our work is not necessarily the vocabulary that the world is using. So thank you very much, Nikki, for that, and to my colleagues for your questions and clarifications.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Helen. And, we do realize that's a lot, but I think it was really important to tie that in. I mean, this is work. It's not happening in a lot of places. So to be able to do this during a pandemic, with that being really one of the top focus, is really important. So, Ms. Marks.
Yes. Just again, thanks, Nikki. And we really wanted to embed that presentation because we are talking about recovery services, in particular staffing. And a lot of the information that Nikki just shared does relate to some of the recommendations that we're going to make. So thank you, Nikki. Okay, recovery services. So as you just saw, we look at assessment and data. And in terms of recovery services, this is really imperative to look at that assessment and data in order to determine what we're going to do to support our students and how to drive our instruction. So we have already gone over mid-year assessments at all of our elementary schools. We saw some math needs. We've talked a little bit about early literacy needs, and we're going to talk more about that in our next school committee meeting. We've done end of year assessments. Right now we are doing the MAP assessment, which is part of the assessment results that we shared mid-year. We typically did those in grades 3 through 5 in reading and math, and then some select 6th grade students, typically those students who had some special needs. We have greatly expanded that testing for this spring and for next year. So we are doing that in K through 8 now, all of our students. And that is happening. Some schools have already started, and that will continue over the next couple of weeks. And we will have that data before the end of the year. And that will help us in terms of our planning as well. We'll also be doing the end of year DIBELS. You've all heard about the DIBELS before. So that is an early literacy screener, and that will be happening in June. We also have been working, you've heard us talk about the data teams meeting at our schools. We are going to continue to meet and to target instruction with the help of our coaches. You heard last time the elementary principals talk about how successful that has been. And toward that end, we have entered into a partnership with Boston College. We have a 2-year plan to really develop our data teams, and we are looking to do that work in conjunction with the equity work that Kristen Ando and I have started to do with our principals and staff this year. So we have our first meeting, and we're going to meet with both consultants next week on the 13th. And I've already petitioned principals for a summer meeting, 2-day meeting, to get this work off the ground, and we will be meeting on July 14th and 15th. Almost all of our staff all of our principals are available. I think one has a vacation away that was already committed and paid for, and Dr. Goddard, who is our AVEC principal, is going to actually be on maternity leave, but she emailed me recently and thinks that she may try to come in anyway. So we're very invested in that work. So curriculum professional development. So there's a group called Educational Research for Recovery, and they talk about this tier 1 support, the core instruction that's happening for students being the most important place that the recovery is going to happen. Again, as I mentioned, you heard the principals express how valuable the coaching has been for them. We also have had numerous teacher and recently student testimonials on that. So some good news is today, one of our literacy coaches, Jackie Taylor, had a baby girl, healthy baby girl. And last Friday, we had a virtual shower for her. And some of the teachers had prepared at different schools student comments. And it was just so wonderful to hear the students really cite specific types of things that they learned from her coaching videos, and that has changed the way they attack their academics, the way they see themselves as readers and writers. So it was really, really great. And again, student testimonials as well. So that is a big piece of what we're going to be looking at. Professional development. Nikki has talked about professional development for SEL. Nikki and I have already met. Nikki has prepared for me a plan of recommendations for professional development going forth next year. We are looking at math PD. Obviously, math is a concern that we have. We are also looking at doing some universal design for learning, and we have someone who's going to be working at all our schools, providing some hands-on training in that. And we also have her speaking already on opening day. So it'll be part of our kickoff prepping for next year. We will have some, as I mentioned, data training. We'll have some literacy training. We are meeting with we're doing some professional development before the school year ends this year with our K-2 teachers around some changes in literacy. And that will continue over the course of the year. I am in conversations with Mass General Hospital to do some training with our teachers as well. And that includes our reading interventionists and our special education teachers as well. So they will be a part of that literacy piece. You heard Nikki mention responsive classroom. Again, that was part of why we felt Nikki's information was important. Some of the schools, Dr. Gilligan and I, both at Thompson, we used responsive classroom there. That's probably the school that it's still used at the most. But we wanted to look at having some facilitators to work together at each of the elementary schools to help support that morning meeting work happening. Again, tier 1 social emotional. Curriculum resources, so we will be looking at some recovery funding for curriculum resources. And one of the examples of that will be K-2 literacy and decodable texts. So moving forward, looking at recovery services and positions, we are looking at adding a reading interventionist at the ABEC. We are looking at really targeting some pre-K literacy intervention and instruction as well. I know that you've heard our coaches talk about this in past years, how important those early years, even before students come into school are, but then really catching them at that preschool, kindergarten level is important. We have a coach, we have 2 literacy coaches, obviously already. We are going to place one of our coaches solely at that building to really help develop those teachers and work on those skills. At the elementary level, we are looking at increasing coaches, so hiring additional literacy and math coaches. I think I mentioned last time we had a math coach. She had some health issues, so we really didn't have her this year. So we already have one position in the budget, and we're looking to add some recovery service positions in terms of that coaching. Again, all that tier 1 piece. We are looking at social worker for the elementary level. Right now, Nikki and I have spoken, and most of the data points to a lot of that time being at the Atkinson School, but obviously we will continue to evaluate that. We are looking at some classroom teachers, looking at class size for some of our grades. Also looking, again, the responsive classroom facilitators. We are looking for a math director, K through 8. So we have our humanities director, Kristen Ando. We have our STEM director, Cara Larcombe. We're looking to take the math off her plate because she's doing a lot of work with the data management. She works with gentleman, Paul Minuti, setting up our data systems. She has done a lot with the instructional technology. She's doing a lot with the science. And obviously, you know, Cara has taken on the elementary OLA directing as well this year. So we're looking for someone with some good math expertise who will focus just on math so that Cara can focus her energies where she is, and we have someone directly with the math piece. And we're also looking at adding an English learner teacher. I did look at some of our preliminary data. I don't know if you heard the news recently. They were talking about the number of students who were absent from schools, not just North Andover, but schools in Massachusetts this year, and how many of those students were EL students. And we certainly saw higher than average absences in our grade 1 and 2, and 3 through 5 groups of EL students. So we're looking at absences probably about 50–60%. So that's a concern. So that's the EL teacher that we have there.
Excuse me, Lorraine, before you move on, I may have missed it, but I didn't hear you talk about the bullet point for interventionists. I think you went from coaches to social worker.
I may have skipped over that. So yes, we're looking at some tier 2 interventionists for both reading and for math, adding at our elementary school.
Thank you.
And then at the middle school, we're looking at adding a literacy coach / interventionist. So it will be a split position. The same with math. We're looking at a related arts teacher, an evaluation team leader. Again, you heard Nikki talk and show some data on the increase in initial referrals. So, and it's not just for social emotional needs, and I'm sure Marcy could verify that. So we're looking at someone to help run those meetings. As a former special needs person, you know, there are timelines, legal timelines that all of that has to happen in, and we need people to be able to manage that. Looking also conversations with Nikki and the data at a social worker at the middle school.
So,
and then at the high school, again, social worker. Oh,
Mrs. Marks, quick question. What is the related arts teacher for?
The related arts teacher has to do with safety and the number of students in those related arts classes. We are anticipating, obviously we don't know for sure, but we are anticipating we're probably still looking at that 3-foot distance for safety when we come back to school.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
You're welcome.
For asking.
Okay, and then the high school, we have, again, social worker, again, through conversations with Nikki. Again, evaluation team leader, and Nikki shared some of the data just on the social emotional initial referrals. We're looking at some teachers and a school psychologist, and the school psychologist will really be, we have this person bulleted under the high school, but they will do more than high school evaluations.
And again, when you're looking at teachers there, is that safety and distancing?
Safety and distancing, as well as looking to provide some academic support. So.
Thank you.
And that's in addition to the 5 already
Correct.
in the budget? Okay.
Yep.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Can I ask
All
a
right,
quick
I'm going to
question?
turn it over to Jim.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Pam.
So of course my ears perked up when you're talking about the English learners and their absences, and I can attest to how difficult it is to get our English learners into school. And I'm so wondering if there's ever been a discussion of hiring a parent liaison, because I know that the work that they do in my school is priceless. Like, you know, just because I think that sometimes part of the attendance issues are fear and not having the confidence, the families won't have the confidence to contact the school to ask questions or to, you know, whatever, navigate any part of the system. And if there is that parent contact that they have who might have the language as well and just understand the culture differences, it helps kind of build those, bridge that community gap between our L's and our schools in a new school, a new whole environment for them. So just wondering about a parent liaison possibility.
So there actually was a parent liaison position in the budget last year. We did not fill that position this year. It's certainly something that can be discussed. We had tied it in with the registrar position, but we really were looking for somebody who would be able to speak at least one of the other prevalent languages other than English in our district, and to be able to help reach out to those families. So yes, there has been some conversation about that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Jim to talk about cost.
Right, and this just ties in the positions that Lorene has identified with the funding that we had talked about during the budget process, where the town manager and Dr. Gilligan had worked out that the town would contribute $2.6 million towards recovery services. And this is the breakdown of what Lorene just presented. You can see the number of FTEs of each position. You can see the cost of each, and then the total. So we also, in speaking with the town manager, she asked us to include the benefit liability, that while they're only one-year positions, they are benefit eligible for the year, which will help us in hiring, but we needed to include that liability, and that's what you see there for employee benefits. $15,000 is the most likely liability for an employee. Not all of them will choose that, so there could be some funds coming back that we wouldn't need to use for the benefits. And we've also identified the curriculum resources that Lorene was talking about, as well as the PD, to come to $2,590,000. A couple of things. One, we are already starting to post these positions because, as we saw with the tents, there's going to be a huge demand for these positions. So we're trying to get out ahead of everybody else and start to hire these positions. The second thing I want to mention is that the $2.6 million is what was identified, but there will be additional funds. We have the ESSER 2 and the ESSER 3 grants that will be coming our way. So as we work through the summer analyzing the data and the team continues to work and we identify opportunities and needs, there will be other funding opportunities to meet those opportunities and needs.
Absolutely. And Dr. Mealy, do you want to talk a little bit about our meeting the other day with the town manager, and just in terms of...
Before we do, I wonder if there are questions about the body of what Ms. Marks brought forward, that Dr. Mealy has now given us the dollars around the information. I feel like maybe we need a minute for committee members to ask any questions. Or do you think that you need to finish up before we do that?
No, I think that's good.
Okay, all right. So I'll start with Ms. Lynch.
So remind me, I know that we talked about this during the budget, and I had thought the extra $5,000 for a teacher went to benefits, but now we're adding benefits at the end. Why is it 60 instead of 55 now?
When you say, so 60 is the we've had, over the years, it's been 55 and 56, and so that just is the average starting salary of a teacher or of a social worker. That's what those numbers are. The 15,000 is if they choose healthcare.
Right.
That's the town contribution for that, for
Right.
healthcare.
Okay. No, I thought when we did the budget, we had increased it from 55 to 60 because we were told we had to factor in benefits or something like that.
No,
but-
because these are that's a good question,
Very
good
good question.
clarification. Because these are one-year positions. There's no OPEB liability involved in these positions. So the $6,000 for 10 years was the additional, was to cover the OPEB liability of that new position that was expected to stay in the
Got it.
budget and
Okay.
have an OPEB impact.
So we're
Good.
looking at this just because we think salaries are going up.
The 60
Yeah,
is for that
yeah.
reason. Yep,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Ms. Petrowski?
I think I asked my question earlier, so I don't
Okay,
think I have any others. Thank you.
great. Mr. McDevitt?
Two quick questions. Recovery services positions at the ABECC. So one of the things that I'm kind of hearing, and I'm just wondering if we've got a solution or something in the works of how do we pull some of those students out for intervention type work, and where will we do that in that building? I understand there's some space constraints in order to do some of that, and I know we've got a space study going on right now, but do we have capacity from a physical perspective to do that as well?
So, Andrew, it's a good question. When I've met with the principals, one of the things that we've talked about is needing to consider space and think creatively. We do have a small room at the ABECC where we currently do have a reading interventionist. She is a part-time reading interventionist and part-time EL teacher. So we are going to be able to up a little bit of our EL time around social language. And then have the reading interventionist can both work in that room. At one time, our two coaches, Jackie and Ann, did reading intervention together in that very same room. So it is possible. Where we're going to house the coach, we're not certain yet.
Gotcha. Okay. And then my other question is a little bit for Dr. Mealy and maybe Mr. Landry as well. But, in terms of hiring these staff members, right? So it's great that we'll put it out on our, open careers or jobs, whatever that section is on our webpage. But are there any job placement fairs, things of that nature? And I don't know if they're virtual. I mean, I don't, normally I know that we've gone to some of those when we have anticipated in a couple of years, like, hey, we're going to have, 6 openings or, something like that. What is the plan to help? I know it's been a concern to diversify some of our staff as well.
I can actually speak to that a little
Okay.
bit.
Anyone?
Probably more
That's
concise
okay.
than Dr. Gilligan.
So I with our consultant at BC, I've had a couple of conversations with her. She has given me some leads in terms of agencies and groups that are in Massachusetts that I was not familiar with. I don't think we as a district were familiar with. He has reached out to one of those, and Kristen Ando and I also spent some time looking at some of those agencies with the woman's name is Michelle, and I today sent about 5 links to Greg Landry, our HR director, to be able to pursue. I do know in conversations with him, because of the pandemic, there really are not a lot of job fairs, but some of these sites do have some virtual opportunities.
Great.
So that is definitely something we're looking at. As part of that equity course that I mentioned that Kristen and I do with the principals, we actually had a session yesterday. And at the end of that, we are working on looking at our interviewing differently. So even if we don't necessarily get a huge racially diverse population of people applying for these positions, we do want to still look at how we interview and look at who is a good fit. So Principal Jackson already did some work around that with his leadership team earlier this week, and he shared that experience with all of our principals. We normally meet once a month. We are going to meet in just a couple weeks again to talk about that subject. They have some work to do in the interim, just so that we can start to incorporate some of those kinds of issues, thoughts, questions, ways of looking at things into our interview process. But as I said, we also have some new leads on some ways that we can look at diversity hiring as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm just going to toss in, I know that Dr. Mealy mentioned that we've already posted a number of these positions, and as he said, we do want to try to get out in front of it. So we are trying to get interviews set up soon, and some people, in particular interventionists or coaches, have already contacted me via email. And it looks like we potentially have some good people applying. So I was very excited by that as well.
Great, thank you. How about Ms. Mabley?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. And I just have a question that's not directly related to this, but when we're talking about hiring people, I'm reading that nationally we've got a lot of teachers that are going to be retiring. And so I'm wondering if we're expecting a lot of retirements and if we are advertising in anticipation of those.
We do know some retirements that we do have, Helen, and those positions have been advertised for. And I know at least one of the elementary schools has already started interviewing.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, it's just people are getting snatched up really fast this year, I think. Okay, then we're ready for the next step about go.
Great. So thank you so much. As we look to next year, really, in terms of recovery services, what works. So a huge priority is, making the school year that all students have really good instruction, the interventions they need, the SEL support they need. So that's really, really important. And these positions, this is really unique. You're not going to see a lot of communities going for this. And this is the time to do it. It's the time to intervene. It's the time to make a difference. So I'm thrilled that we have this opportunity to do so. As we talk about other NAPS programming, we'll talk about that. I think one of the other things that communities don't do the best job of is leveraging the partnerships with different folks. So we'll talk a little bit about leveraging partnerships, with Rick Gorman, with our Stevens Memorial Library. I think we may have one of the best community programs around, and other community partners. So just an example, and we'll be coming back with more information on more of these. And actually, we're on the verge of a couple other partnerships that we haven't solidified, but hopefully, if they come to fruition, will be really good for our kids. But here are some examples, on our end with North Andover Acceleration Academy. Jeff Riley just came out in his latest On the Desktop, asking schools, to work through them to start putting this together and to start doing that kind of work, to set up acceleration academies for the summer. This is, I'm fortunate enough to have done my dissertation in Lawrence, a lot of it on turnaround and what they had done there. And this is really important, and this is good work that can really make a difference in our students' lives. So we're going to go to a slide on that as an example. The extended school year more than ever. Certainly Marcy could talk a long time about that. Special education population was certainly impacted everywhere as, with this pandemic. I think that one of the things that's unique about North Andover, although it definitely impacted North Andover, one of the things that's important for people to know is there are a lot of districts that didn't have as many kids do 4 days a week to start at the beginning of the year. They didn't qualify as many kids who did that. And Marcy from day one said it's non-negotiable. We're going to get as many kids in here as we can. So I think that's really important to know. And I also think that every year the extended school year special education program is just remarkable. And that's been a pretty remarkable thing for a long time. Summer school at the high school and credit recovery, the superintendent's summer reading challenge. I'm thinking since Dr. Mealy, even though he has his doctorate and other degrees, and a minor maybe in Russian, Dr. Mealy, that, with your MBA, we may have an assistant superintendent's math challenge this year. So we'll be doing that, and we partner with Stevens on that. The online learning, we will have that available. Students will be able to keep their computers all summer, and we'll have ST Math, Lexia, et cetera. Community programs and Excel enrichment. There's not only just, athletics, there's not only enrichment, there's not only academics. We're going to invite Rick Gallant next time to come and talk about Ed2Go offerings. That's a new partnership we had, I believe, last year, which is pretty remarkable, and really tackling, the social emotional learning, in these programs, as well as we're going to feed kids, at the Acceleration Academies. And additionally, although it's not listed tonight, we're looking at also running programming, similar to the Acceleration Academy with a focus on Title I and EL at the Woodridge is going to provide their rec center and some space for us. Next slide, Dr. Mealy. All right, so Ms. Marks.
So just a little bit more about the Acceleration Academy. Again, citing that group, Ed Research for Recovery, they actually talk about the work that was done in Lawrence under Jeff Riley with the Acceleration Academies. These academies are aimed at our highest need students, and it's really a targeted skill. It's not just kind of come in and we're kind of helping you with your math or whatever. It's really targeting skills, math and literacy skills, and that it shows very strong evidence of effectiveness. So we are following, so probably in the middle of March, DESE sent out some information on Acceleration Academies and what they're seeing across the state, which mirrors what we see in North Andover in terms of where the focus should be. So it's actually March 22nd, I submitted our intent and interest in participating in that Acceleration Academy piece. We haven't heard back from DESE yet, but we're continuing to move forward with our plan to do so no matter what. So the Acceleration Academies, we're looking at August 16th and 20th and August 23rd to 27th, right before school starts, for a couple of reasons. I think it's been a really challenging year for everybody, and I think everybody needs a bit of a breather. I'm not sure that we would have a lot of kids, especially kids who struggled with school, jumping right in the end of June or early July. And there's also a concern about giving teachers a chance to breathe and hopefully being able to get some really great teachers to participate in this program. It will also get kids ready and moving to start school right after these 2 weeks in August. So really warming them up, gearing them up. So the focus would be on literacy for rising K through 2 students, on math for rising 3 through 5 students. The focus in grades 6 through 8 will be primarily math, although we are looking at one literacy section. And the focus in high school will be math grades 9 and 10, although, so Caitlin Flanagan, who's a teacher at the high school, math teacher, is going to be overseeing the Acceleration Academy at the high school. And we talked a little bit this week about looking at some juniors, if they fall in that, because of the way the MCAS went this year, where they don't have to participate in that. They could do the competency determination. So we're just looking at whether that makes sense as well. And again, it's targeted instruction and progress monitored. And as Dr. Gilligan mentioned, it's touching on academics, social, emotional, and there will be meals for the students as well. So next slide. So Dr. Gilligan mentioned the community programs. I'm not going to get into a lot of this. This is really Rick Galante's expertise, and we have invited him to attend the next meeting to talk about all of the opportunities that he will have there. And that will cover academics, social, emotional, as well as enrichment. Stevens Memorial Library, we always partner with Stevens. We do summer reading, we do Any Reads, we do the Superintendent's Challenge. So we are in the process of finalizing our summer reading list. I've been in contact with all the school librarians. Elementary list is pretty much done. Still finalizing our middle school and high school lists. The theme this year is Tales and Tales. So that's what the books will be, the theme that the books will be on, and what happens at Stevens will be around that theme. Stevens is looking at some story times at the Stevens Estate and possibly 2 live performances, hopefully up there as well. There are not going to be any programs in the library building this summer, again, due to the pandemic. this, the conversation I had with Kathleen Keenan, who is the director of Stevens, took place over the April break. So, and I don't think any of that is going to change. We will continue with reading logs and beads. Students will need to register for that by June 14th. And that will take place from the June 14th until August 6th. And Charlotte, who is the children's librarian there, is also doing live video and Zoom meetings with our classes to try to encourage kids to participate, let them know, how they can get their books at the library. Oftentimes we have kids take a walk to the library in the spring, make sure they have a library card, show them around, and we really can't do that this year. So that is how that will be happening. And then Greg is going to talk a little bit about community partners.
Yeah, I mean, this is one example. We're still working on a couple others, but what I feel really excited about is that we're out and ahead of this. And I think, getting these jobs posted, particularly in a time when we're hearing from some, from the consultant we're working with, and we had met with some other consultants to see if they might be a good fit to work with us, is that there's a huge shortage of anyone that wants to work this summer. Folks feel like they need a break. And most teachers desire to have a summer vacation. So, one of the challenges is there's going to be not a lot of folks to teach summer school. So having a scientifically evidence-based program that's worked, that could be really successful is terrific, because the last thing we'd want to do is hire folks just to fill the spots who are less qualified, and so I think that's important. So, these other partnerships are huge. I stopped by the other day on my way out to Sargent and saw Rick Gorman, and, he kept saying, this is going to reverberate in terms of SEL and all those things for 5 years. And I think one of the things that he said was kind of exciting to me is, typically they open up summer fun and they fill up a bunch of spots over, I forget what he said off the top of my head, whether it was a week or a few days. But it was a record for 3 hours. He said it was like an all-time record how many kids they signed up. And so to have a program that runs to kind of the first week of August, dovetails into the Acceleration Academy. We have a lot of folks doing, community programs, programming as well. But there's just nothing better than, summer fun. I'll let Marcy talk in a second about our partnership with them and the work we've done with them in terms of special education programming. And then, community service, sports and athletics, recreation. I mean, we've got to really re-socialize kids, get them outdoors, get them back doing all these things. And Marcy, do you just want to, this is one example of leveraging a community partner, but do you just want to talk a little bit about this really special relationship? Because I don't think this exists anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of evolves and has shifted and changed a little bit based on, pandemic, but also based on needs. So we've expanded it a little bit more this year. And that there's going to be, so Rick and I work together, starting probably March, April, collaborating, communicating about the needs of the students who are going to enroll in summer fun. And so for this year, there is an adjustment counselor at each site as well. So two of our wonderful elementary school adjustment counselors will be working there full time. In the past, it's been our amazing high school adjustment counselor, Tom DiStefano, who has worked there for years and years and years and does an amazing job. He is taking a year off, definitely deservingly so, to spend with his own children, having some fun over the summer. But Jillian and Megan, who will be doing it at each site this summer, are also amazing, and they know a lot of our students already. Our BCBAs, 3 of our BCBAs actually, will provide behavioral support and training for any students who require that. And we also send TAs. So a lot of different levels of support, just based on the kids who just sign up. So we want it to be, and Rick's really, has done a lot of work to make it as inclusive of a setting as possible. So we want to support him in making it an inclusive environment as possible for a lot of our students. So I feel like it's been a really positive experience for many students who may not have even thought about accessing it over the summer. So it should be great.
Great, thanks, Marcy. And as I said, we have a couple other things that we're looking at partnering with, and if they can come to fruition, we'll get that information out as soon as possible. But we're excited to be able to get out in front of this. We're excited to be able to post jobs for the summer And we're looking forward to moving ahead, turning the corner. I think we're finally starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. And although we face challenges, certainly this community, the families, the staff have proven that they're up for it. So thank you.
Okay, so we'll just make one last go around, see if anybody has any further questions about summer and the other things that Dr. Gilligan talked about, and I'll start with Ms. Lynch.
No questions. Thank you for this. This is a lot of good work gone into it, so I appreciate that we're getting out in front early.
Ms. Pietrowski.
So just had a quick question about the Acceleration Academy, and do you, like, how many students do you anticipate, or how many are you planning for? And then who is it is it offered to all students, and how is it going to be, I don't know, offered or advertised or shared? Because I love that it's at the end of the summer, but if it's not in school, it might be a little bit trickier to get a commitment from families. And how soon do you need a commitment?
Yeah, I can let Ms. Marks go, but it is for our some of our kids in most need, and so it is open to everyone across the district. Ms. Marks?
Right. So as Dr. Gilligan said, we are targeting our students with the highest need. They will be identified before the school year is out. That is part of the meeting I had with the coordinators for the Acceleration Academy this week. We are going to, we talked about how we will target the students, how we will discuss the opportunity to attend the Acceleration Academy with the students, as well as with the parents. So that should be done before school's out, so they'll have that idea. The Acceleration Academy model is small groups, so each group would be about 10 students. So you're looking at, so say we have 4 groups at the middle school, so that's about 40 students one week and 40 students the other week.
And would parents be able to request if they're not identified from the school?
No, I think we are really using the data that we have on the students to identify the students, okay. And that's how the academies work.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Pietrowski. Mr. McDevitt.
So I'm just going to continue on a little bit for Mrs. Pietrowski here, but I think this is great. I mean, there's a lot of good things here. I mean, I'm definitely. I don't want to say concerned, but, I want to be sure that families know kind of what's there, what's available, all of those things. So, I mean, that's going to be great. If students, I'll just make this up, right? But if there's a specific number of students that, or desks that are available in the Acceleration Academy, and those are not filled, are we opening that further?
Yes.
And if you just said that, I apologize if I missed it, but.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's why we're going to start working now. And if we identify students and a family says, we just can't do it, or for whatever reason that student isn't going to participate, we will then go to the next student in terms of the sort of list that we put together for those students who indicate that level of need.
Okay.
So we would not leave empty desks.
Okay.
So.
All right. That's good.
Yep.
And hopefully that can be in some consultation with Mrs. Murphy as well for students who, may need some of that, extra support there as well. And we can help try to find some of those students that are there. And then, with some of the community program enrichment opportunities, which I think Rick does an amazing job. Rich, I'm sorry. With what's out there. But there may be some, additional things that kind of come up and be offered there as well. I'm hoping.
Yes, and as I mentioned, he's going to be at our next school committee meeting, and he's going to share what he has going. He definitely has some opportunities that have not existed before. He's doing a really great job.
Okay, because I really think there's a lot of students who, as much as they may not be excited about going back to school, but might like that jump start. So, Okay. All right, more to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. And Ms. Mabley.
Yeah, actually, that was piggybacking on Mr. McDevitt. I love the Acceleration Academy, and you have listed here meal, social emotional, academics. And I'm imagining for some of these kids, it's going to literally need to be around getting them psyched about school again, right? And so I'm assuming that's factored into this. It's not just, we've got to get your math thing in place. You got to want to be there. And that, is that part of the package?
Yeah, and we talked about, so in the meeting with the 2 coordinators this week, we talked about including things like self-advocacy when you get to school and you know that you're struggling, how are you going to get help? Some of the executive function types of things, like how are you going to get yourself organized? How are you going to, make sure you're getting to school? Like, what are the hurdles? So definitely including some pieces around those kinds of social, emotional, and motivational issues. Because when you're a student who's struggling, which these, we're identifying students who could use that support, that's hard.
Yes.
Hard.
And you can't mandate that they come to these either. So there will be some students in September that you're going to have to almost do a parallel Acceleration Academy around like that, those same issues, it sounds like.
Exactly. Right. And that's why I think Dr. Gilligan mentioned early on, really recovery services are happening. The biggest bulk of that is happening in the fall when we have all our kids back in school, because not every child is going to partake of summer, whatever the program is. So we really want to have that focus when we have all of our kids back in school.
Right. Which is why I think the offerings from community programs, and also the fact that, summer fun is great for the elementary kids. It's actually also great for all the high school kids who work there.
Yeah, I mean, we have
as well,
we have more kids that work there than and I got to tell you, they go on. I've watched them over the years. Most of them go back to work for Rick, and then some of them we scoop back up here in the schools. But they really go on to do remarkable things.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is a credit to the community. I mean, to the youth services program. They learn a lot of leadership skills. Not only at North Andover High School, in our athletics and our band and all of our stuff too, but the combination of that and working. Really pretty awesome.
Yeah. Again, that gets back to like the things we used to do, as it were, and I mean, loving to go back to school. You want kids to feel, and I think we're lucky that we're in 5 days a week now for most kids, because that's going to make September a lot easier than if we were starting cold then. There was one other thing I meant to ask a while ago. It was actually to you, Nikki. Any of those screenings, did we do any screenings of any of that? I understand the second screening you couldn't do with the Online Academy kids, but the first one, did any of those kids factor into the data that were you able to do any assessments of any of the kids who were working from home all year?
So all the kids in OLA were also included.
Thank you.
In all meetings.
Thank you. I meant to ask that earlier.
Sure.
Terrific. All set, Ms. Mabley?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. I have just a couple of logistics questions because that's how I think. I'm wondering about heat and hours for that Acceleration Academy because we don't have air conditioning most places.
Yeah, so we have some experience with this. I think I was fortunate enough to run Acceleration Academy before there was Acceleration Academy at the Thompson with Title I programming, similar things, and so. There's different opportunities for different schools that have spaces. We have some that are air conditioned, but on the other side too, I know it can be a challenge with the heat. But we still have the tents. We have a lot of shade. We do a lot of stuff outside too. We want to be in the prime locations as well. And, we're also looking at transporting some of these kids. So we'd be providing transportation as well. Dr. Mealy, do you want to add anything?
I was just going to, we utilize the space that does have air conditioning for the indoor programs as much as possible. And usually that's all the spaces we need.
And the hours, I imagine, are going to be like a half-day morning and then release after lunch, something like that. So you're not into the hotter part of the afternoon.
Yeah, we're still working on the hours. Those are all things that we talked about. But yeah, it's not going to be into the heat of the afternoon.
Okay, great.
Most days.
You also mentioned summer meals, and I'm wondering, I think last summer we had meals for kids all summer long.
Yes.
Is that happening again this summer or only for students who are in some sort of a program?
No, the federal government has approved to continue to provide meals for the community through the summer. and I think even through the next school
I
year.
think it
But
was 2020.
Yeah.
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 But Erica Murphy will be doing so, and what we've had to let her know is that all of these programs are going to be happening, so she's got to kind of split between providing for the community and making sure that those who are participating in the programs are getting meals as well, and she's all
That's
set.
great.
Yep.
And if you
Thank
recall,
you.
last year we were doing the meals for a lot of pickup too, at the Stevens Memorial. So
Library, right, yeah.
Yeah, and I just, I hear it over and over again, what's good for a student with high needs, what's good for a student with special education needs, what's good for a teacher who's providing those things. It is good for the general education population. So I think the Acceleration Academy will give, a dress rehearsal for all those teachers and all those students to then help the folks when they all come back in September, right? Those kids that are primed can help their peers to understand, who doesn't need help with executive function? I certainly do. So I just appreciate all that you're doing and all the benefit it's going to have for, for kids at all levels of need. So thank you very much. Whew, good job, you guys. That's hours and hours of preparation and presentation. We really appreciate it. And if there's nothing else on that topic, we are on to the first read of the student handbook. And Suzanne Egan is here with us.
Suzanne,
Yes. I
if
am
you want to
here.
maybe give a little bit of an overview, because you've been the really driving force, even prior to me becoming superintendent, around this work, and you've
Certainly.
done.
Certainly. So the student handbook is a combination of all the handbooks for the entire school system, and it was initially developed as one book in order to create a culture for the students coming in at the kindergarten level and going all the way through to the high school, so that they understood the expectations, and also for the parents, obviously, that those policies would be available for them, and the expectations would be available for them. So this year, most years, we have changes to the handbook due to different policies that have been adopted throughout the year by the school committee or by input from the principals or teachers. And this year, actually, there's only very few changes, and those relate to the discipline section, and those are just some changes that the principal from the middle school has added. And it's mainly so that he has some discretion, so that, and that we've talked a number of times throughout the years about student discipline for the different levels and consequences in each school, and how it's important for, and how they are sort of graduated, and the each specific factual instance that is the basis for the student discipline corresponds to the consequence that the principal feels is appropriate to the student. And so that's what the middle school changes for their discipline also does. It changes words from will to may. There's a consequence that requires a 3-day suspension to a 1 to 3 day suspension, which is just providing notice to the students and their parents that there is discretion there.
So can you just clarify? I think it's starting on page 49. It looks like from what I've.
I was, and that's just because that's the change. Actually, the only change.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that's what we're all discussing here.
Yes, it is.
And Jim's presenting it as well.
There you go.
Well, that's sort of more of a contextual one. Instead of graduation exercises, it's the school activities and events as a clarifying change, I think. But more so if you go to page, on page 49, as I was saying, in changing something from will to may, that is under the level of penalties and other restrictions, and it's, as you can see, it says at that point every infraction may lead to suspension regardless of the level. And that's for a habitual offender. So that's just giving that discretion to make sure that it's appropriate for the individual student and circumstance.
And above that, it gives a range of days instead of a specific number of days.
Right. Yes,
And then-
that's the 1 to 3 as opposed to the 3-day required suspension.
Are we allowed to ask questions now, or are we going in order?
Well, I wondered if we wanted to just finish what they were. There's only a few more. Jim, do you want to just scroll down to the next pink?
It's at page 50.
And so some changes in what level things are happening.
Yeah, and this is on page 50D1.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Student may not threaten or threaten to strike. So it's just adding additional language in there. I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
And I think that's all, right, Suzanne?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so Holly, yes, absolutely, it's time to ask questions.
So my question is on that one, on page 51, number 3, replacing the word hit with strike. Is it intentionally left in the last sentence, being hit first is not an acceptable excuse, or should that also be changed to struck?
That should be changed also.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Petrowski?
I don't think I have any questions.
That's fine. Mr. McDevitt?
Just a quick clarification on page 64, it's the appendix for graduation requirements. I just want to be sure that that's been updated based on migration to the semester. Do we know that?
Yeah, I do not believe that we have any impact there.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. And Ms. Mabley?
I was going to ask the same thing about semester, so I'm all set.
I'm seated before you.
It looked like, because I know from the presentations that the requirements remain the same, but I wanted to make sure there was nothing.
I feel like there was something that was off by like 2.5, or
Right,
something
right.
got rounded, but other than that, I think it was pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps we can ask the high school administration to take a look at that, Dr. Gilligan, and make sure that there's...
Yeah, I believe we already have. I think when we
think
get the
it's
high school schedule approved, the changes we talked about would be in, making some adjustments with an MOA in the contract or a slight language change.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I had some requests that I made during the week for some additional information in the table of contents, which I think you took care of, Suzanne, is that right?
Yes, that is right. So there's a link to all 3 levels of discipline as opposed to elementary, middle. And now it says elementary school, middle school, high school. You can go right to that particular section.
The bookmark, yeah. Thank you, I appreciate that. And if we, come up with other questions, we certainly have a second read that we can do and address any that we may have. So thank you so much. And we are at that time of night where we have a go around and, a member's moment in case there's anything you want to share with the district, anything you've seen or anything you're interested in that you want to share or that want the community to be aware of. And so I will start with Ms. Lynch.
No comments tonight. Thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Petrowski.
No, not really. Just excited to see the kids back in school. I know my own kids are really starting to come out of their little COVID shells. And happy to see spring sports started. It's been good. Feels
Great,
normal.
thank you. Mr. McDevitt.
Yeah, I was just going to say excited that we are back, and I've heard from a number of teachers and even some students as well, just that the buildings were loud again and how good that sounded, right? That they were just happy to have the noise of students and learning back in the building. So that's it.
Terrific. And Ms. Mabley.
Just a couple things, and I'm sure you're going to say something about this too, Ms. Picard, but I enjoyed being with the Interact Club when they were giving out their saplings that they sold, the trees that they sold, and they did a great job, and I was really happy for them and was happy to be there to see what they had done. I also happened to, I guess because I have a middle schooler, read the NAMS just published their April issue of their Literary Leagues magazine, and there's some seriously talented poets in the middle school. I was blown away, but and some beautiful art. So if you get a chance, it's You can get it online. Mr. Gonsalves tweeted it and things like that. But really, really great job by those kids. And there's a lot of emotional stuff in there too about this past year. And then just to mention that the North Andover Middle School is doing a Cradles to Crayons gathering of clothing. So for, I think, infant to 14-year-olds or something, clothes that would be appropriate for them that they're collecting over the next 2 weeks. I know I dropped off a massive bag because my daughter grew like 7 inches in last year. So I thought that was wonderful that even in these crazy times, they're managing to do some service. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, just want to thank the community for their participation in the capacity forums. Remind them to please participate in the next capacity forum and the survey. It was terrific to see the students at the Interact Club with the trees, and they overshot their goal. I think they wanted to sell 250, and they sold more than 340 or something. So that was really terrific. While I was over at the high school, I took a walk with Ms. Mabley over to the track side and climbed up on the Eagle Project that was made for NACAM to be able to share those sports events that happen up on that field. So really thankful for that. That was Aiden Loth, and I've been trying to get him to come back so we can congratulate him. And we have another scout who's approached us at doing an Eagle project over at the Sergeant School. So I'm hoping that'll come forward in the near future to one of our meetings. And I'm excited that the Anne Bradstreet Poetry Contest, which wrapped up, I think, on the 30th of April, and I think they're going to announce their winners on the 15th of May. And on May 22nd, they're going to have an event where some of those poems will be shared. So perhaps some of those fantastic middle school poets will also be sharing at the Anne Bradstreet. So if that's all our business for tonight, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.
So moved by Ms. Lynch and seconded by Mr. McDevitt. Assuming that there is no discussion, we'll have a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Lynch.
Yes.
Ms. Petrowski.
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt.
Yes.
Ms. Mabley.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so that's 5-0 in favor of adjourning this meeting until May 20th. It is 9:34 on the 6th of May, 2021. Thank you all for joining us. Bye-bye.